And so they're looking at us literally like their ancestors, like they have our genetic material that has helped create them, not only to perpetuate the gray civilization because they were, in a sense, in trouble and not capable of actually reproducing anymore. So they created these hybrids to continue their own culture. But in response to the fact that they've been created using our culture, he's trying to return the favor, so to speak. He's giving us an opportunity to not go down the same destructive path that the Greys went down that destroyed their civilization. So he's giving us this information so that we can perhaps have a better outcome. And that is his gratitude in return for his existence or his civilization's existence. They live on a planet in another parallel reality. In their ancient language, it's called Esasani. And he is of the Sasani people. They're about 5 feet tall on average, very thin, very pale. Eyes are much larger than ours. Head is a little larger than typically for a human. The males have no hair. The females do. It tends to be white. Their ears, mouths, and nose are a little smaller in comparison to ours. But they are evolved to the point where they are what they call quasi-physical. So they still have a physical presence, but they also have a lot of the traits of spirit because they're kind of have 1 foot in physical reality and 1 foot in the spirit world. And it's a combination that they experience.
And how do they perceive time, therefore, then?
It's very different for them. They're very multidimensional in their consciousness. Time for him is not what it is for us. So, for example, when he is channeling through me and talking to a person, one of the things he's described is that, let's say a person asks a particular question. Well, that may need to be answered by, let's say, the 50-year-old version of Bashar. But another person comes and asks a different question. It may need to be answered by the 137-year-old version of Bashar. His consciousness can actually slide up and down his timeline, and he can go to where he needs to be to get the information he needs to answer that question at a different point in his life. So time for them is very slippery.
I like how you use the number 137 for an age, which represents the fine structure constant.
I know, isn't that
the 33rd prime number?
Yeah.
So there are no coincidences. So they see us. Bashar sees us. You said like ancestors in a way.
He sees us as family, yeah, and them being our descendants in a way, but in a parallel reality. So he's a different type of human. He's just another parallel reality version of what it means to be human. And he's giving us this information so we can continue our evolution to become more of our true selves as humans.
And he doesn't worry about channeling information that then creates a possible grandfather paradox for their future?
No, from his perspective, that doesn't really exist. That's a science fiction idea of time travel. In his mind, it's just another parallel reality that doesn't necessarily connect linearly to ours. So in other words, he said, if you were to be a 10-year-old and take a picture of yourself, and then you were 30 years old and you invented what you purported to be a time machine and went into it and went back to visit your 10-year-old self and took another picture of your 30-year-old self standing next to your 10-year-old self, he's basically saying that's not the same 10-year-old. It's a parallel reality 10-year-old, and it's not going to affect your timeline at all. Now you're just a 30-year-old version that has come into his reality, and the picture with the 30-year-old and the 10-year-old exists simultaneously with the picture of the 10-year-old by himself. Those two realities coexist. One is not affecting the other.
So it's kind of the concept of you can never step into the same river twice.
Exactly.
Which is interesting, because the water will never be the same. Nothing will ever be the same.
Right. Because all the parallel realities from his perspective exist simultaneously. So you're always shifting, in a sense, and going onto a different track. You're not actually going back into your own past.
Okay, so what is the human story? What is this? What is this experience that we're living, and what's the reason for it?
My understanding is that from a soul's point of view, physical reality is what souls choose in order to experience, process, change, and discovery. Because in a timeless state, in our natural state as spirits, nothing changes. We know everything. So the only way to discover something new, the only way to have an experience of creation, of change, of process, is to create this condition within the soul's consciousness that we call physical reality, where we introduce the concept of time linearly, the concept of space and distance and change and growth. And that, from Bashar's perspective, is the way creation expands. Because he's saying the structure of existence never changes. What changes is your relationship to it, your experience of it, and your perspective of it. And that's how creation keeps changing, not that the structure actually ever changes itself. So we come into this reality as a way of expanding creation, the way creation has of expanding itself through us, as us. And it gives us an opportunity to discover something more. It gives us an opportunity to experience process, change, and creation as aspects of all that is.
And so I guess to a certain extent for Bashar, I guess, would you say that his civilization are very spiritual?
They are very spiritual, yes, but it's a very practical spirituality because to them, there's no difference between, in a sense, physical reality and the spirit realm in terms of its fundamental reason for existing. So this is a very spiritual experience from Bashar's point of view to be a physical being, because it gives you the opportunity to discover more things about creation, about existence, from a really unique perspective. So to him, it's just as spiritual as being non-physical.
And what about from an emotionality perspective for Bashar?